This video is going to discuss some more practice using for loops. You'll notice that I have a couple of buttons on here, one to actually run the macro that I'm going to show you, and then one that clears the screen. So let's just take a look at the macro. Again, the first thing we're doing here is we're initializing, or declaring actually I should say, a bunch of variables. And then I initialize a few of these variables. Notice I'm not initializing all of them, I'm only initializing what I needed for this first part. And so what I want to do is I'm going to have a for loop that's going to iterate or loop over some rows. So I wanted to specify the top row and the bottom row that I wanted to loop over. And I want to specify which column I want to use. Now, what this little piece of code is going to have you do is draw a box on the screen, if you will. And I'm going to show you code that just draws the left-hand side of that box. You get to draw the right side, the top, and the bottom. So again, it's a for loop, very straightforward for loop. We have our loop control variable, that's row. We specify where we want row to start, and we specify where we want row to stop. That's pretty simple. And then we take the cells row, that's the current row our loop is on, and column left, that's the value that I assigned to column left right up here. And here's something that you haven't probably seen before, and what I'm doing is I'm taking an attribute of this cell. So this is going to be a single cell on the worksheet. And the attribute of this cell that I want to work with is the interior of that cell. Now you'll notice that I'm using a dot after the cell object to specify the attribute that I wish to access. So I'm saying I want to access the attribute, the interior attribute of my cell. And again, I have another dot, and so this dot is a qualifier for the interior object. In other words, a spreadsheet cell has an interior object, and that interior object has a color attribute. So this is kind of an interesting little taste of object-oriented programming, if you will. The cell in this case is an object. The interior is also an object, and color is an attribute of the interior. I'm assigning to that attribute, I'm assigning an RGB value. RGB means red, green, and blue. The RGB values individually have to range from 0 to 255. So if I give the red a 255 and the green and blue zeros, what I'm going to wind up with, of course, is a color red. So it loops over all of these rows. Of course, the column left value is always the same. It's always 4 in this case. But this row value is changing as this variable changes when the loop executes. So let's just go ahead and see what this does. It's going to do probably what you would expect. So if I run this code, it changes the RGB interior color of the cells to red, and it's looping over rows 3 through 10 in column 4. Now my little clear button here allows me just to clear the sheet, so that's pretty handy. I'll show you that code in just a minute. So this exercise, again, shouldn't take you too long, but essentially what you want to do is you want to create a for loop that'll draw the right-hand side of that box. And you can draw that right-hand side anywhere you want. Just make a column number. My left-hand side was 4. If you want to make the column number 8 or something like that, that's fine. And then you're going to draw the top of the box. Now the top of the box, of course, is going to have to go from whatever the left is to the right that you specify. And it's going to have a fixed row number. So that means that the column variable is going to have to be in the for loop. And finally, you'll have a similar loop to draw the bottom of your box. So give that a shot. Finally then, down here you'll notice that the sub called clear all simply says cells.clear. And when you say cells by itself like this, you're referring to every cell on the worksheet. That's a lot of cells. And then we're giving it this command. This is a what they call a method. It's an action or verb. And so if we think about what we want to do with all these cells, we're saying we want to clear all the cells on our worksheet. So this is a really nice little subroutine to keep track of or to keep in mind, so that if you ever want to clear an entire sheet, you can just call that little sub, clear all, and zap, everything's gone. I think it clears formats and cell values and the whole 9 yards. I don't think it clears row and column heights, but it gets everything else. So go ahead and see if you can get those other 3 sides drawn on that sheet. It should look like a box. I don't want the box filled. I just want the borders of the box. Okay, thank you.